But I look at scarcity. I look at those constraints as opportunity.
Mm.
So they actually help you be more creative.
Yeah.
Because you're probably familiar with Saturday Night Live, and those guys have to produce a show every week, and that
Yeah.
constraint brings out their best creativity, and they loved it. They said, if you gave us a month, I don't know that the show would be any better.
Right.
So there's a forced creativity that comes through that constraint, and money is a constraint.
Yeah.
So our production company says, okay, just tell us what your budget is. That way we can say, what's the best show we can make for X amount of dollars, 100,000, 200,000, $500,000, whatever your budget is.
Yeah.
They know now here's the constraint, and that's also the constraint that you're living in. But also, one of the things we've learned to do is budget on 3 different tiers. So we have a low, middle, and high, and then there's the go to the moon budget, which we don't even write down, because if we get to that level, we never got to that level. We'll revisit everything.
Yeah, totally.
But that way, what you're charging toward.
Yeah, I love that.
To do the event at all, you've got a minimal budget that you're expecting to hit a certain number. Let's say it's 1,000 people or 100 people if you're doing a smaller event.
Yeah.
So that you've got to do that, and you're going to do it. You're going to spend that much pretty much no matter what.
Yep.
Like there's certain things that the costs don't go up and down depending on how many people you have coming.
Yep.
But there's other things that are marginal costs that you're going to raise if you're going to hit a middle and a high ground.
Yeah.
But that's what I would encourage you to do is look at those constraints and say, you know what? All right, we used to do this really huge party on the USS Midway.
Cool.
But it would be a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money to spend. And so we're saying, well, how can we create a great experience, but not spend that much? And we had some hiccups trying to figure that answer out.
Yep.
Haven't always nailed it out of the park, and it's hard to compete with that experience, let's be honest.
Yeah, for real.
But there are other ways to create experiences. And so you lean into, well, what are the human experiences that people are coming from? And I want to hark back to something you just said right before you asked that question, because you talked about looking at your experience at events and looking at those places that were great and they were terrible. That's a great thing to do. But what I would also add to that is think about your customer, how much are you like them? Because their experience might be different than yours.
Very true.
So where are they hanging up? Where are they getting hung up? Ask them those questions. They'll tell you. They'll be glad to tell you, you know what, that was really cheesy when you did this, or I loved it when you did that. And you might have hated the thing they loved and loved the thing they hated.
That's
so
good.
You got to take yourself out of the equation and realize I'm not planning this event for me. Tamra, you're probably much closer to the person that I am planning the event for.
Yeah.
So I'm planning the event for you and people like you. So I need to know what makes you tick and what causes you to turn off and want to leave.
That's great.
So that's just an important thing to do. Is it's really hard. We want to plan something that we're going to love.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the same, but it's not always the same. And you need to know where those differences are.
That's great insight. Especially I'm thinking about one of our nonprofits who we love is Gen Y. And as we get older, that population, we feel further removed from this younger high school, middle school. They're obviously not, Generation Y is not a thing, so don't get confused. We're just asking them to ask why. It's a mental health advocacy experience. But, they've got rap artists and dancers and hip hop artists and all these people that I like that. But if you were to say, Tamra, what'd you listen to last night in your own free time? That's not what I listened to. And so you have to immerse yourself into that avatar experience. That's really, really good. And so you're so on point with that, because I know a lot of men who host events for women, or vice versa, women who host events for men. I mean, there's so much that we could go into from a psychological, physiological, sociological, financial is also super important. One of the things that I find friction in is I'll just call myself bougie when it comes to good food. Okay. I am a foodie. I love good food. And I also have a high caliber of excellence for how I want my food presented to me. And so it was last year's conference. Yeah, last year's conference. So 2 years ago, we had a plated 5-course meal for our VIPs. And it was white linen. It was super nice. They were serving over your shoulder. Was it necessary? Probably not. But it felt really lovely, right? You loved it, the experience. Then last year, about 30 days out, we had not hit our numbers. So speaking to the same budget thing that you're talking about, we had already curated contracts with all of these higher end companies. There was going to be that high end experience, and then there was going to be another one for general admission. And we had to pull the contracts. And in the pulling of the contracts, we brought in some really unique food trucks, which I'm cool with food trucks. I love food trucks. But it changed the entire dynamic of what I imagined in my head this was going to look like. And it ended up being some of the people's favorite part of the event because of the networking and the community that took place versus just being at a 10-person really fancy round table. And so now going into the next year, I'm like, well, golly, how do I make it kind of a yes and a little bit of both? And there's always going to be new ideas that come. There's always going to be new like problems that are curated that then, as you said in the very beginning of this conversation, opportunities for us to grow and exchange new value with the people that are there. And one thing that we did that's going to be different this year than in the past, and something I'd love to hear your perspective on, is we decided not to have a general admission, VIP, and premier pass. We decided everyone is VIP. It's kind of a lens through our faith, right? And like that there's no hierarchy in the kingdom. Everyone is treated the same in the royal family, all of that. But also like, the person who comes for general admission is pretty much getting the exact same experience as the VIP, but like maybe a private party or a private room or maybe access to something. And I wanted everyone to have the same access. What is your thought on doing that, first off? And is there a lens in which it could be done really well, or I could make a mistake?
So we, for the most part, have followed the new philosophy that you're following of having one ticket and everyone gets it. Like all access is all access.
Yep.
Now we've had some lower level tickets, a marketer ticket and a community ticket that are totally based on what you have access to and what you get.
Okay.
So if you don't want to pay as much and you don't really care about recordings and you don't want workshops, then you can get a marketer ticket. And if all you really care about is networking and keynotes, then you can get a community ticket. So those have more been marketing tactics.
Cool. Yeah.
Price anchoring kinds of things.
Yep.
We've talked about creating experiences that people might be willing to pay extra for.
Yep.
But we haven't done it to date. Partly because we don't want to create a class system. So if it's going to be something extra, it needs to be something like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to pay an extra $1,000 because I really do want this extra experience, an extra day, an extra something that, the average marketer doesn't really care about. So I think your ethos that you're trying to create is really important because like we try to create no barriers between speakers and no hierarchy in terms of VIPs. Now we've talked about things like fast passes.
Yeah.
Like at Disney where, hey, if you get a couple of fast passes and you can get a front row seat, but you only get to use it once.
That's cool.
We haven't done it because the technology and the methods of doing it, but I think it brings a level of fun.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you have some optionality. You can play this card at the moment that you want, and we'll save those seats up until 5 minutes before or something.
That's cool.
Again, I've not seen anyone do it. But I think it'd be really fun to do it.
Yeah, I love that idea. My kids always want me to get the fast pass when we go to the water park. And I'm like, nope, we're good. We're just going to wait in line and we're going to create community when we're in line. We're going to play games. And they're like, oh, they don't want to do that. Yeah.
No, it's one of the more boring parts, in my opinion, of amusement parks is when you have to stand in line.
Totally.
But if it's an inevitability, then how do you reinvent it and make it exciting? And I think Disney actually tries to create things that happen, and I think we can at our events too. Is really good. There's some inevitable moments that are going to feel more boring than others.
Yeah.
So how do you bring life to that? What do you do in those moments? Because it can't all be 10s on a scale of 1 to 10.
Right.
So,
right. 100%.